Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Meta Update. My name is Joshua Joshi Howard, and today we're going to be talking about, of course, what we saw in the weekend, this last weekend of stuff going in the competitive guard stuff. Yeah. You've seen these videos before, you know what's up. Let's go ahead and get right into it. To start with, this was a pretty small weekend overall. There were not that many games being played. Part of this is because it was the American Thanksgiving weekend, so a lot of Americans are like traveling back to like their hometown or hosting a bunch of guests. So there's not like in the United States in particular, there was a really low number of events overall. Other interesting thing, combined was only 40% of players this weekend. It's not saying a lot because I think there was like 25 guard players this weekend. It was just really low. But with that in mind, it was not a great weekend for us. We're continuing to see like a very harsh stratification of haves and have-nots in terms of people who are doing well. Because while we have a 43.2% win rate overall, I have 4 singles lists and 2 teams lists to show you guys from what happened this last week. So, like when there's enough people who are when 4 out of 25 people are going like 75% win rate, but we have a 43% win rate, that means there has to be a lot of people who are not doing well. So just kind of keep that in mind as we start talking about things. To start off with, we have one of our first events. This one happened down in Australia. Jawad Salah going 4-1 at the ADFWGA Herocon, which I believe is like an offshoot of like their Australian Defense Force. I believe that's what the DF stands for. Anyway, Jawad was playing Hammer the Emperor, and from what I'm told from some of my Australian buddies, is that Jawad has been mostly a Khorne and Demons player for the past most of the year. So the fact that he was on guard was a bit of a surprise to them. Anyway, Jawad goes in, gets a 4-1. He's playing Hammer the Emperor. He's got Gaunt's Ghost, Lord Solar, a Rogaldorn commander with the Indomitable Steed enhancement for the 6-up Feel No Pain, a second Rogaldorn commander, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 2 units of 5 Death Riders, a Hellhound, 2 Luminous Battle Tanks, 1 Luminous Exterminator, 2 Luminous Vanquishers, and a Scout Sentinel. This is very similar, bears a ton of similarities to what we've been seeing from Nick Jagiello up in Canada. Big thing here is like if you get rid of Lord Solar and like the Indomitable Steed enhancement and instead just add another Vanquisher, this is almost exactly what Nick Jagiello has been running. It clearly works on WTC terrain. I know Nick still likes it on Games Workshop terrain as well. I'm not sure what terrain this was played on, but it's a pretty tried and true style of list. I believe it has like one fewer tank overall, and Lord Solar in there for the extra CP. Um, this ends up having a pretty normal like matchup spread and ends up winning against Imperial Knights before losing to Space Wolves and then beating Votann, Blood Angels, and Death Watch. So just presenting way too many 2-up save vehicles for a lot of other armies to deal with. If you're on WTC terrain, consider taking a look at this. Consider taking another look at Nick Jagiello's list, where you just run mini tanks, mini tanks, a pile of tanks. It does work. You do need a couple of pieces like Gaunt's Ghost or like a couple Death Riders or Catachan or Creek Engineers, something relatively cheap that can kind of like stand in places in order to create a bit of space for like screening and stuff like that. But other than that, this style of list has had some proven success. So congratulations to Jawad on the 4-1. Next, we're going to be going over to Edward Chemnitz at Burn and Learn, where he ended up going 4-1 himself with a very similar list. Like overall, I've definitely thought about this kind of list in the past, but from Edward's list, it is Gaunt's Ghost, 3 Rogal Doran commanders, one of which has the Grand Strategist enhancement, 1 unit of Aquilons and Gaunt's Ghost being the only things that are not a vehicle keyword, 1 Basilisk, 1 Luminous Battle Tank, 1 Luminous Exterminator, 2 Luminous Vanquishers, and 3 Scout Sentinels, all in combined arms. So another pile of tanks. This has a very similar style, actually, to the way that like Nick Jagiello and Jawad have been running. It's just, here's a lot of T11 or 12 tanks with a 2-up save. Can you kill all of it? For a lot of armies, the answer is quite simply no. And these lists are just exceedingly violent. Some of the differences between the lists, of course, is the fact that Edward doesn't have like the strats in combined arms are not quite as conducive to the way that you want to play because you don't have the advance and shoot, you don't have the fall back and shoot, but you do have a ton more damage because you still have access to the fields of fire as long as you have either one scout sentinel or the Aquilon's unit in order to enable that stratagem to exist. Then we also have the lethal hits against vehicles. So this does more damage, but doesn't have quite the same maneuverability that we were seeing over in Jawad's list. It ends up losing in the final round, beating Chaos Knights, Space Wolves, Orcs, Death Guard, and then losing to Grey Knights, which is actually very surprising to me because I think that Grey Knights are very difficult to lose to with Guard right now, especially because the Grey Knights do not have great tools for anti-tank. They really are just relying on hitting the charges with their Nemesis Dread Knight Grandmasters, who have like the D6 plus, I think it's D6 plus 2 damage on their hammers, but even then, they only have like 5 attacks on 3s rerolling 1, so they're going to get like 4 hits and then like 3 wounds, and then we're going to save one of them. So even then, they usually need more damage than that to actually kill a vehicle, and we can overwatch them with lethal hits. So I'm a little bit surprised that Edward lost in the final round to Grey Knights specifically, but the rest of it makes a lot of sense. You do have a lot of volume, you do have a lot of damage. It is a very violent list. So a second pile of tanks getting a 4-1 this weekend. Next, we have Tom Wright, a player that I have seen their name pop up before at the West Allotment, getting second place overall with another combined arms list. Tom did have a bit of a submarine, and if you don't know what a submarine is, if you lose relatively early at a GT, right, if you lose your round 1 or your round 2, you're going to be playing up against people who have also lost one of their early rounds. People who lose their early rounds tend to not be the strongest players because they tend to lose to other like medium strength players. So whenever I see someone who loses round 1 or in this case round 2, you always have to take it with a little bit of grain of salt. I'm not super surprised at Tom Wright going 4-1 anyway, but you do have to kind of keep that in mind that he was playing up against some players who did not do as well at this event. Anyway, Tom has Gaunt's Ghost, a Keating command squad with Grand Strategist, 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, 1 Engine Seer, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 2 Toroxes, 2 units of 6 Bulgrin, 2 units of Kazarkin, 1 Cyclops, 1 Hellhound, and 1 Scout Sentinel. So a bit of a grab bag, but this is still very much in like the archetype of you have 2 Rogaldorn commanders, you have 2 units of 6 Bulgrin, you have some Kazarkin and transports, everything else is kind of whatever you want it to be. One of the things that I am looking at with this army that is a little bit interesting is the fact that it does have the Cadian command squad with neither Ursa Creed nor a Castellan, which has been catching on quite a bit. We'll take another look at one of those lists later on. So it doesn't have the same kind of flexibility with that unit. But typically what you tend to see with this kind of stuff is the Cadians will sticky their home and then oftentimes like move to the natural in the same turn because you get such a long line of guys like spread out that you can sticky that. Cyclops can be played in a couple of different ways, and the Cyclops is actually like really brutal anti-surge tech. It doesn't quite work as well into like Victrixes, which have the reactive first, because if they like roll a 6 or they're in tactical doctrine and they can just move 6 inches, then you can just like move into the Cyclops and blow it up that way. But otherwise, against things like World Leaders Berserkers, the Cyclops is really good anti-surge tech because you're like, this is the closest thing to you, and if you make a move, including a surge move within 3, the Cyclops dies. It's the closest thing to you, so it's the only thing you can surge into, and then you're still going to be in the open. So it's really brutal anti-surge tech if they do not also have if they do not also have a reactive move. Other than that, pretty normal stuff coming out here. Just it's a lot of stuff overall, and that's always a good thing. Next, we have Jerome Connolly, and I want to give a shout out to Jerome. Since I've been paying attention to all of the like top players, people who are doing well at events, and actually like tracking who's doing well, Jerome has set a new record, which was previously held by Patrick Greatbatch and tied by Nick Jagiello, for appearing on the spreadsheet the most in a single data slate. Jerome has now shown up 5 times on the September data slate, breaking the record that was held in the June data slate by Patrick and Nick, who were at 4 appearances in one data slate. So Jerome having a fantastic September data slate, and there's still a little bit of time to go, so maybe he can push that record to all the way to 6. Anyway, Jerome coming in with something that seems fairly heavily inspired by a lot of the other things we've been seeing. It takes a lot of inspiration from what Gustavo de Sousa has been playing, but without the Castellans. So it's a Gonskos Keating Command Squad, 1 Catachan Command Squad with the Ogrim Bodyguard probably attached there. If you're seeing a Catachan Command Squad, they're almost always attached to the Ogrim Bodyguard, but the fact that I believe it was equipped with a Bulgrin Maul is a little bit surprising, because if you want to attach it to the Keating Command or the Catachan Command Squad, you do not have the Ripper Gun to shoot. So 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 1 unit of 20 Cadians, 3 units of 10 Catachan, 2 Chimeras, 2 units of 5 Death Riders, 2 units of Kazarkin, and then 2 Leibnir's Vanquishers. So this is fairly normal from what we're seeing, especially on the UKTC, which I believe Jerome tends to play on UKTC, or he definitely plays like in that country, so it's a mix of UKTC and GW for the most part, from what I understand. But still a relatively violent list. It doesn't have the same kind of raw violence that a lot of like the triple Kazarkin, what do you call it? The triple Kazarkin in transports lists tend to have. But you do have what you oftentimes see in UKTCs, you'll oftentimes see like 2 units of Catachan, whereas Jerome coming out here with 3 units of Catachan. So a lot more OC in this list in order to run around and deny objectives, and a fair number of relatively cheap. You have 3 units of Catachan, 2 units of Death Riders, that are all like about 60 points. Then you have like the Catachan Command Squad, which is again like 65 points, 100 points if you include the Ogrim Bodyguard. So it's a lot of relatively cheap things to run around in the middle that don't really do damage themselves. Jerome ended up beating Blood Angels before losing to Eldar, before smashing Eldar immediately afterwards, and getting Dark Angels and Chaos Knights. This one as well, also losing in round 2, does mean it's a little bit of an easier win path overall in order to get the subsequent wins later on in the event, but still, nonetheless, a very impressive second place for his 5th appearance. Also, I think I forgot to say, congratulations to Tom Wright on a 2nd place as well. Okay, those were all of our singles list. Not a ton of new exploration happening over here. It's time to start talking about teams. Once again, if you are interested in where I'm getting these teams lists, or why they're not always doing the best, it is because I'm less interested in like what list did really well, because if you give like someone like absurd shooting boards and just like give them a bunch of tanks, you don't have to be very good at the game to just pull levers on tanks and just kill people. It helps being good, but it's not really what we're interested in. I'm way more interested in what are good players playing at teams events, and for that, of course, our cutoff is you need to be at least 1800 you need to be at least 1600 elo, which puts you about in the top 5% of players. And once you hit that benchmark, and you play a teams event basically at all, you will appear on this spreadsheet. I don't think I have that one available to the public yet. I might end up releasing it at some point. Anyway, for this one, it was at the Leipzig Major. Konstantin Dietz coming in 1627 rated player, going 4-1. I believe his team was like 2 wins, a loss, and a draw, I think. I don't care enough to go check, but he went 4-1. He went 20-0 into Montcau against someone who is actually in my Discord, Hello K, having some time on Montcau instead. 20-0 against Plague Legion, 13-7 against Infernal Lance, Chaos Knights, 8-12 into Berserker Warband, World Leaders, and then 11-9 into Chaos Demons Demonic Incursion. The list that Constantine was playing: Gaunt's Ghost, a Krieg command squad with the Grand Strategist enhancement; Lord Solar, a Rogaldorn commander, 1 unit of 10 Cadians, 2 units of 10 Catachan, 1 unit of 10 Krieg, 2 units of 5 Rough Riders, 2 units of Aquilons, a Leibnir's Exterminator, 2 Leibnir's Vanquishers, a Rogaldorn battle tank. I think it's only 2 Leibnir's Exterminators, or 2 Leibnir's Vanquishers. I don't think it's a third one. I think that's a mistake. And then 2 Scout Sentinels. Overall, this was fairly interesting. This, to me, looks like a list that is mostly going to be playing relatively open boards. You have the 2 Rogaldorns, you have the Exterminator, you have 2 Luminous Vanquishers, Um, this like that's a lot of shooting. You're going to be winning a lot of shootouts. I went into Mont Tau and got a 20-0. This is the kind of thing that is probably going to be. It doesn't have to first defend, but it looks like a list that wants to first defend. I am a little bit surprised that it is a Krieg command squad with Lord Solar instead of a Cadian one, but the Krieg command squad and having the 10 Cadians anyway, like the Cadians can still like sit on your home and hang out there, but the Lord Solar with the Krieg command squad and the Krieg can move out earlier, move out onto the board a little bit earlier because you have the Cadians who are screening your home already. And Lord Solar is not a pushover in melee. He still has like six attacks on twos at like I think it's 622. Basically power fists coming out for the Imperial Guard, which is not nothing. Like you're gonna kill like a couple Marines with that, so it is relevant punching that he does have available to himself. Overall, though, it is still a lot of violence. The 2 units of Rough Riders, the 2 units of Aquilans do give you a lot of like weird mobility where you can be in a lot of places. Yeah, you can just kind of be in a lot of places all over the place. So not super surprised that this goes for one of a couple of 20-0s. The big question then becomes, it does look like it kind of shifted a little bit later on to have a different style, potentially being like a scrum defender later. The big surprise to me is the 11-9 into Demonic Incursion. I did take a super close list at the Chaos Demons list, but this is, in general, in a team's environment, I feel like this list should generally have a pretty darn good matchup into Demonic Incursion, so I'm wondering if Constantine got kind of unlucky, a bunch of 6-inch charges, maybe some holes in the screens where like Scarbrand or a Bloodthirster got like a good rapid ingress in order to pick up a couple of tanks that he wasn't expecting to lose. But otherwise, like the 2 Rugaldorans, 2 Vanquishers, and an Exterminator, you should be able to fairly consistently pick up like 2 big demons or the Great Unclean one for Feel No Pain Great Unclean one like per turn. So it should be relatively easy to kill a lot of big demons. So an 11-9 is a little bit surprising because of how hard this list should be able to push them on primary. Okay, the last one, we have Harley Scully of 6++. If you are interested in checking out any of the content that they put out, it is available on the 6++ YouTube. They do, I think it's weekly podcasts, but they also do like TTS stuff. I've appeared on like, I was playing Recon for like the first time, like right when the Codex came out. I played up against Jack on their channels. They do a lot of good stuff, a lot of good guys. This is an interesting event. So before I talk about Harley's event, I do want to give a little bit of context. This is based on my research, so the details might not be exactly right. However, Team England is kind of in their process of trying to select their players, trying to pick like the people who are going to be. They're doing like the first round of like selection in terms of people who might be playing for Team England at WTC around this time. And this event, Team England Prestige 2025, is basically all of the applicants, or maybe not all of them, but a large number of the applicants for people who want to play for Team England at WTC. That means that it's going to be an incredibly strong event. I think it was 6 teams of Team England and Team England hopefuls, and then like Team Ireland and like Team Scotland or something like that, where it's all a ton of very strong players. So Harley, who is an 1800 player himself, having a bit of a rough event, getting 1 win, 2 losses, and 2 draws, is, you have to remember that it's up against an incredibly tough field. Harley, I know, does play a little bit of guard, but it's not his main army. It's one of the armies in his repertoire. Whereas a couple of the people that I see that he played up against are playing some of the things that are like their specialties. With that in mind, let's go ahead and go through it. It is 2 Cadian Castellans, 2 Cadian Command Squads, 1 Catachan Command Squad, all of them joined to Ogren Bodyguards, 2 Rogaldorn Commanders, 2 units of 20 Cadians, 3 units of 10 Catachan, 3 units of Kazarkan, and 3 Chimeras. This is, if not like an exact copy of the list that Gustavo took to the World Championships of Warhammer, it is incredibly similar. You still have the 3 Kazarkan and Chimeras, you still have the 2 bricks of Cadian Castellans with the Cadian Command Squads and the Ogren Bodyguard. You have the 2 Rogaldorn Commanders. You have the... I think Gustavo took 2 units of 10 Catachan, but maybe it was 3. I don't remember exactly. This has been fairly tried and true, but unfortunately, this was not a great weekend for it. But again, it was up against very, very strong players. So getting a 10-10 into Warhorde Orcs, being piloted by Brian Sipe, getting a 4-16 into Halo Screed, being played by Sam Nash. That's one of the ones that I think was probably, I don't know, I imagine it's probably on WTC terrain. Um, and that this style of list does seem like it could have some issues with Halo Screed just because it has like the combination of, I believe that one is the one with the reactive move. And it also, like, if you have like lots of places to just hide your Sicarians and your Ruststalkers and your Infiltrators and whatever, it can be relatively difficult because they will blend through the Cadian cast of bricks relatively effectively. That said, I'm surprised at a 4. I feel like this is probably like I would have matrixed it around like a 7 or an 8. So curious what actually happened there. 12-8 into Star Shatter Necrons. Feels about right, depending on exactly what style of Star Shatter it was. A 5-15 into Sisters, which were being piloted by Gustavo, the guy who, really started pushing this style of list in the first place. Um, if you're interested and you're in the Discord, you should probably ping. Both Harley and Gustavo are in the Discord, so you can definitely ask them about it. And then the last one, a 10-10 into Emperor's Children. Big thing about Emperor's Children and this kind of style of list is if you lose the Cadian Castellans, like say the Winged Demon Prince charges in, kills the Cadian Castellan with the precision strat, and or like they're not called incursors, what are they called? Infractors. I think they're called infractors. That just have like precision on like all of their stuff always. If you lose the Castellans because you're a little bit sloppy or you're not thinking about the precision, you really neuter the Cadian bricks super, super quickly because they lose sustained, they lose fallback and shoot, and that's like a ton of the power of the unit. It's just like its ability to kind of go anywhere and almost always get its damage off. And if you lose that part of it, it very quickly becomes difficult for this style of list to play. And on WTC terrain, where the charge distances are relatively short and Emperor's Children are very fast, I can see how this could be a bit of a more difficult matchup, especially because there's not like the just number of tanks on in this list that you oftentimes see in a lot of guard lists. And so there's nothing here that the Emperor's Children is really going to struggle to kill overall. Anyway, not the best result overall from Harley, but against a very strong field overall. And that's why I wanted to show it to you, just showcasing what can happen when these kinds of lists are being played up against some incredibly strong players. Anyway, that is it. That's the last list that we have for this weekend. Kind of like I said before, not a ton of new stuff. We had a couple of piles of tanks. So we had Jawad, Edward, and Constantine all playing like very heavy tanks. We had some like tanks in midboard. I've been calling this the Gustavo Recombined because Gustavo calls it Recombined, and I tag his name to it because I like attributing things to people. And then we had Tom Wright and Jerome Connolly, both with fairly normal styles of things. I believe both of these events were in the UK, but I don't remember exactly. We should be expecting a little bit of like this next week and like the week after, we will see some number of events. But other than that, we're very rapidly approaching the part of the year where there's not going to be a ton. So expect a rather large, or I will expect a relatively long video next week and then really short videos for the rest of the year. Anyway, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Meta Update. I'll see you guys all next week. Bye bye.